Gentlemen, I mean, franchising is hot right now. I think we've seen a huge insurgence in people interested in franchising, and a lot of people think franchising of stuff like this, food franchises, Crumble, Dunkin', Jimmy John's, but these big investors aren't messing around. I mean, they've came to us and said, hey, we want something that's going to be recession resistant, recession proof, something that doesn't go away, it's not a fad, and so we've seen a big boost recently.
Franchising is the new real estate for large investors. It used to be, I'd put it into an apartment building, or I'd put it into, 85 rental homes that are making $200 a month off of kind of thing. And they're just not putting up with those low returns anymore. And they're going, what can I put into them? And a lot of it is, these guys are entrepreneur by spirit, but they don't have the time. And that's the biggest thing, is I have a lot of guys that have had successful exits in their own company, and they don't want to step back into the 10-year grind that they had to go through for that first company that they owned. They know that pain. They want to fast forward to the happy part, the part that they've been doing the last 5 or 10 years, and they see this as a way to get those kind of returns without going through that first headache.
Yep. And a big shift into service brands. That's the big thing right now, is a shift in the service brands. And so examples, for people who may not be aware of what service brand is, but when you say that, think of like gutters, insulation, irrigation, roofing, that kind of stuff, the boring stuff, mosquito control, because they're gonna be here forever. And typically those industries are dominated by kind of the smaller mom and pop sort of scenarios. And so you can go into, let's say, a Nashville, Tennessee, or Dallas, Texas, that's pretty big, but these smaller mid-markets maybe, and just blow it up because there's not any big competition there, right? So we've seen that happen, especially with our gutter companies and things like that. And it's a great investment, unbelievable returns. I mean, you're looking at a situation where you could get like 30% net every year, who's not gonna like that? And then have an asset to turn around and sell, not to mention the tax savings with this as well. So Ross, anything you've seen with your clients?
Yeah, when you think about it, Mike, you talked about investors, obviously a huge client base for us, but let's talk about those corporate guys that are trying to get out of what they're doing today. Why are they looking at owning a business? Because I'm sure they're looking at real estate and other investment opportunities. It's that business ownership, and more importantly, it's that path out of what they're doing today. I mean, you can read any news article out there that talks about how many folks, I think they're calling it the Great Resignation, where folks are reinventing themselves. Historically, we've been taught 401ks, work until you're 70, and maybe you can retire. What we're finding now with these brands is not only it's a great investment, to your point, I mean, high growth industries, high ROI, great return on your investment, but what we're seeing with these home services brands is the level of support that you get from the franchise itself kind of sets them up for success. So we're seeing a lot of these corporate guys, maybe they're not ready to leave their job today, but they're leaning into these concepts, figuring out a structure that makes sense for their lifestyle, and ultimately that's catapulting them out of their job a few years down the road once they're hitting those financial goals that they've set for themselves.
Yeah, you said something that I really like. So these service brands have gotten more sophisticated. I think that's the other thing we're not talking about, is these service brands are now fully automated marketing systems, great, some of them will help you hire your employees, fantastic marketing, they've got great operations, unbelievable software packages, and so they're very sophisticated, and I think that's been a big push as well, why people are more comfortable buying a brand. I don't know how to install insulation, but I would buy a franchise that does, because they've got it all figured out.
Well, I think also from the franchisor and from the high level area, franchising is stepping into more industries, right? Like, we think of investors are getting into more franchising. Franchising is getting more into the different spaces, right? When you first franchised, it was food and fitness. That was a franchise. Now the guy painting walls, the guy's doing gutters, the guy's doing the kids stuff. Every single industry is getting a leading franchise in there. So it didn't have, in the past, it had to be, well, these are your two industries that are franchise heavy, and they were almost exclusively franchise heavy. Now, there's a franchise in anything you want to do. Any space you want to do, there's a leading franchise in there. And from the corporate standpoint, it's making more sense. Some of our brands, they started out as a corporate entity that scaled, and they hit capacity, and they said, I can't manage and do this well nationwide with a bunch of managers in place and a little tiny profit share and all that kind of stuff. They're going, why don't we turn this over, put it into owners' hands, and us benefit from that? It's a much better model than having 7,000 corporate locations now. You're seeing a lot of that space.
Well, think about this, emerging concepts. We talk a lot about emerging concepts, and that can be confused with startups. These companies that we're working with are not startups. And so, I was talking to a guy the other day, very interesting conversation. We were talking about food concepts. He was in love with some of these big names. You drive down Main Street, you'll see 10 of them, maybe more. And we talked about the emerging concepts. I said, well, as you look at this, one thing to think about is you could open, you name it, a Jimmy John's, a Subway, a Dunkin' Donuts, whatever that may look like. And if you fail, they don't care. Not that they don't care, but they have thousands of franchisees, right? The interesting thing about these emerging concepts is they may have 50 franchisees nationwide, and they're not gonna have 51 if they have a 30-40% failure rate. So they go out of their way to support their franchisees, which is what I love about these emerging concepts we work with.
So the other thing we've seen a lot right now is just people want control. They want to live life on their own terms. They want control. We're right now filming this, and we're in kind of a middle ground with the recession. Like this is middle 2022 at the time we film this, right? So this recession's happening, kind of, and people want control because they're worried about their job. They're worried, are they going to have a job? And the best way to beat a recession is have control, right? Like if you lose control of your income for your family, it's a problem. So we've seen an influx in the last couple of months of people like just nervous about the idea of maybe a year ago, they're like, I want to open a business or buy a franchise, but they never did. And now we're here. And now they're like, okay, I need to get serious about this because I think a lot of people get nervous about buying a business in a recession, but man, what a better way to offset that? Buying something that's recession proof, like restoration.
Well, also we think about, having the 9-to-5 as safe, right? That's what we're told. Go to school, get a 9-to-5. It's safe. It's not safe at all. Your control. We've seen all these layoffs, massive layoffs. Those guys don't have control over that. You have control whether your business survives and all that kind of stuff. And sticking in industries that aren't going anywhere. Because if we're not heading into recession now, we eventually will.
Sure.
Economies are cyclical. Like it's eventually going to happen. So, when I invest, I look at what makes me money now, what makes me money long term too.
Yep.
It's got to be resistant,
Yeah, one thing I'm super excited about, I love, because I'm so pro-entrepreneur, and I think we've seen a lot of people recently reach out about business for their kids.
Yeah.
So they get through college, or maybe they're not even gonna go to college. I've seen a lot of people their kids are taking a year or two off out of high school, maybe doing some traveling or whatever, coming back and the parents are like, we're not gonna send you to college. Like we think buying a business is a better investment for you and us potentially. And I would 100% agree. We've had deep discussions on college right now, like the status of, sending your kids to college. Are you saving for college for your kids? And I love the idea of investing in a small investment startup franchise. We've got one now at the donut concept, that would be fantastic for somebody in their 20s. I love that idea. And so we've seen a big influx of that for our bigger investors. They're like, I'm gonna sink $100K into a business for my child versus college.
Yeah, one of the biggest things we talk about with some of these, what we call semi-absentee or manage the manager type setups, is finding that key person to work with in the business. Who's better than your daughter, your son, a family member? Because ultimately, and we hear this a lot, the terminology, I want to build a legacy, right? What does that look like? Now, the investor may be at the tail end of their career and they're looking for a way to bring their family along with them and be more involved. If we've seen nothing over this, the pandemic, the COVID, is that folks are leaning more into their family or that core base of people around them.
Yep, true.
And they're wanting to stay around, and whether it's location or just working within a business. And this is a super great opportunity for them to take advantage of what is out there from a franchising standpoint.
So I ask you, your top reason right now to buy a franchise, what is it?
Control. 100% control. Why I like those clients is I was very fortunate to be one of those clients.
Yeah.
Right? So I went to school. I opened my first franchise the day of my last final in college. And it was because I was very fortunate for my parents to be able to invest in that for me. So I am that client, right? And I've been able to do that. And now I see it as part of my job to be that for the next person, right? I'm looking for operators that I can give that hand up, not a handout, and go, look, I want to give you an opportunity, because that's what I was given. So those clients are special for me.
That's awesome. How
Absolutely.
about you? What's your number one?
I'm always going to say ROI because I love to make money. But another piece that's so important that sometimes gets glazed over is the tax benefits of opening your own business.
Man. Love it.
Well, what about you, T?
You guys both stole my, I like the control thing, and then I back it up with the tax. So now I'm gonna, I don't know, the third option, that's tough. But I'm so pro entrepreneur. I think the world is solved by problems by entrepreneurs. Yeah. I mean, we look around the ones of our time, like the Elons of the world, like they've solved so many amazing problems, and I just want to give people a piece of that. So I think just take control. To your point, on the back end, the taxes, but like the control, because I love entrepreneurs and what they do. And I think this is, once you have a piece of it, you understand it, and you can teach your children in the future to take control. And I want to show my kids that you can have control of your life and potentially hand them something eventually too, or show them that.
And I think one thing that surprises people is there's this misconception of owning a franchise eliminates that control, right? Because there's a franchisor and all that kind of stuff. It's not handcuffs, it's a path. It's still your business. You can still have control, you make decisions, but it's an informed decision, right? Take control doesn't mean take a risk always.
Yep.
It means take control, make a calculated investment, know what you're getting into. And so that's a big thing, is people think, oh, well, opening a business is taking control, but franchising is just an accelerated form of owning a business.
Yep. We told you our whys, so now tell us yours in the comments. Always feel free to reach out and click on the link and schedule time with one of our advisors. They'd be happy to have a discussion with you. It's completely free, about 15, 30 minutes. Learn a lot about somebody and help them get on the right track.